What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel for Webflow Pros. Today's tutorial is actually made specifically for patrons. So if you're part of the Tricks Patreon page, thank you so much for supporting this channel, allowing more content to be produced. As a special thank you, I've made this tutorial just for you. In this tutorial, we're basically going to cover two interactions. We're going to cover a press and hold to enter a site, and then also a click and drag to enter a site. So these are two pretty neat sites I found on Musely that have this sort of intro page, and whenever you press and hold, it starts a countdown timer. If you let go, the countdown timer just resets, and you'll notice the background's sort of moving too. And then once that countdown timer ends, you enter the new website. Same with this sort of drag to enter is the same sort of interaction. They have some nice parallax tied to the mouse move, but basically whenever you click and drag, the image in the background starts to move with your mouse, and then whenever it hits that bottom part, you'll notice the shape of the circle changes to more of a white outline and a little bit larger, and whenever you release on this part, it enters to the new site. So we're going to cover how to make both of those in Webflow. And we'll start with the hold to enter. So go ahead and paste the code from the Patreon page into the closing body tag section, and you shouldn't need to change anything in the code from there. Basically, inside our section, we're going to drag in a div, and this will be called, it's going to need a very specific class. So all of these will have no capital letters, and then instead of spaces, we'll use dashes. So this will be called tricks-press. And that specific class is what the code's looking for. So this can be some sort of circle, or you can style it however you want, but this is the thing we're going to press and hold to enter the site. And then inside that, I may even add somewhat of a Lottie file that I can queue up, and I may drag in maybe this load in Lottie, and I'll just give it a class of my Lottie, and it'll just be position absolute inside this Tricks Press container. So that's in there. I'll be able to play that later. And then also, I want to drag in a little bit of text. So I may grab maybe a heading, make this an H6, and then I can make this say something like hold to enter, just so the user knows what to do here. And then that's pretty much what I need there. So we also need to know what URL do we want to take the user to once they hold down however long. So for that to happen, we're going to need to drag in a link block. This can be anywhere on the site. And basically we're going to need to give it the URL of tricks-URL. And then we can set its display to none, so that way it's not actually taking up any space. We're just putting this on the page so the code knows what URL to grab. So for that to work, we need to go ahead and apply a URL. It can be to an external website or to a page on our site. And we'll just go ahead and apply that URL in that link block. The last piece we're going to need is a little bit of paragraph text. In this paragraph text, we're actually going to need to give a class. This will be called tricks-number. And basically in this paragraph text, I'll set it to display block for a second. We want to put a number in here. So this is based off milliseconds. So like 500, for instance, is 500 milliseconds or half a second. However long you want the user to have to wait when they're holding down before advancing to the next page, that's the time you should put in here. So 1000 milliseconds is 1 second. And I may also have an interaction that plays the Lottie that lasts 1 second. So I make this last just a little bit longer, like maybe 1100. That way it doesn't take you to the end of the page. You can see a little bit of that Lottie finishing before it advances you to the next page. Once we have that number on the page with the class of tricks-number, we can set the display to none because we don't actually need to see it. We have the time set and we know what to do there. So the tricks-number is actually going to be the thing that our interaction needs to be tied to. So we can, with the tricks number selected, we can do an element trigger. It'll be on click or tap, and we can apply this to the class. It doesn't matter because there's only one element. And on first click, we want to do create an interaction, press and hold start, and this will start our interaction. So from here, we could maybe grab the Lottie file and maybe we want to play it. So with Lotties, you need to set 0 seconds and set this as an initial state for this to work. And then the Lottie will pretty much end somewhere around there. And we'll set this again, the duration to 1 second, since that's about how long it's going to take before it takes us to the next page. Something else we may want to do is actually just scale up this whole press while we're holding on it. So I could use a scale here and set it to 1 by default, and then we can maybe scale it up to maybe 1.2. And again, that should be a duration of 1. And then also we may want to make this Lottie in the background move. So I have a Lottie file back here that's sort of a Lottie video, and I can go ahead and select that, set its initial state to 0, and while we're holding, this Lottie is just going to play out all the way to the end, and this would be a duration of 1 as well. So while we're holding, this should grow, the Lottie in the background should play, and that seems to be working pretty well there. So we'll go ahead and duplicate this interaction for the second click, and then instead of press and hold start, we'll name this press and hold restart. So this is going to take it back to the state it started off whenever we release. Say we were to release off this button before it gets to the end, it's just going to rewind that Lottie back to where it started. So I'll delete the initial states, we'll take this Lottie back to 0, this sort of loading Lottie. We'll take the scale back to 1 where it started, and we'll also take the background Lottie back to 0. So that should be doing the trick there. Now, for this to work, we can't actually see the changes in here in preview. We're going to have to actually publish the site and check it out on the live site, since it is using a bit of JavaScript. So on the live site, this loads up. We have our Lottie in the background. Now, whenever we start to press and hold, you'll notice that that video in the background is playing now. This Lottie is moving and this holding is scaling. And if I release before it ends, it's just rewinding it back to where it started. So that's working perfectly. Now what happens if I press and hold to the very end and let it just finish? It advances us to a new page, which this next page we're looking at looks pretty similar. It's the drag to enter page. So we'll go ahead and cover that interaction next. So I'll go over to the drag to enter. So this one's going to need a couple different things. It's going to need a link block again. And this link block would have the URL of, I believe, tricks -URL. So with this method, this one actually won't work on mobile, and the reason is we're going to use a while scroll interaction to sort of, or actually it would be a while the mouse moves over the element interaction to sort of move this Lottie. So we're going to sort of hack a click and drag interaction. That way we can use it to play the Lottie in the background. So on mobile, we may need to hide this and switch it back to the press and hold interaction, since that one is mobile friendly. But this one should work pretty nicely on desktop. So we have that tricks link set up. We're going to go ahead and link it to a page so it knows which page to go to. We'll take it back to that first interaction page, but you can put it wherever you'd like. So once we have that tricks URL, we'll also go ahead and add in a tricks contain for a class. So tricks-contain, and basically this is just going to hold our click and drag UI. So inside that, we'll need another div, and then this will be tricks-drag. And then this one, I'm setting a width and a height on it. I'm also setting a background image to center of this line and just set it to contain in no tile. So I'm just putting a line right in the center of that tricks drag. And then also the code's going to switch its position to relative on the live site. You don't have to worry about that here, but that's just something to note. And we'll also set its display to flex, vertical, align it to the center, and justify to the top and bottom. And the reason we're going to do that is we'll drag in another div here. And this one, we can go ahead and call it tricks-circle. So this will just be the circle that's at the top of this div, and that's why we're using Flexbox. We also want, whenever we drag down into this bottom piece, we want it to trigger an interaction. So we're going to go ahead and drag in another div, and we'll place this inside the tricks drag, and this will be called, I believe, tricks-trigger. So we want the trigger to be on top of the circle, so that way when the circle goes underneath, this trigger will be on top. So we just need to make sure it has a higher z-index. So like I might set the z-index to 2 here, and I may set the z-index to 1 here. The code's also going to insert another div on the live site that has a z-index of 100. So we need to make sure to keep both of these elements under 100 for the z-index. So that is set up there. We also may want to basically add a little bit of maybe some text inside this first one here. So actually, instead of paragraph, I may use a heading, make this an H6 again, and maybe this can say something like drag down to enter, just so the user knows what to do there. And basically that should house all the elements we need. So we can go ahead and just start setting up our interaction. So the first thing I'm going to do is with the tricks drag div, select it. We'll go ahead and create a mouse move over element trigger. And I'll go ahead and create one and call it move trigger. And basically we would just want to move this circle down while our mouse moves. So using the y-axis, we'll go ahead and set a move. And then however you have the height defined, whether that be pixels or whatever unit you're using, just move it down. So I'll move this down kind of far down here. And then I may also scale it up while this happens. So we may start the scale at 1, and then when it moves down here, maybe we'll scale it up to 1.2 or something. May move this down a little bit more, and that's looking pretty good there. So that appears to be working. If we preview, seems to be working pretty smoothly. We also don't want this to start all the way at the end, because there's a chance the user could overshoot and then the cursor just snaps back to the top. So for that, we're actually going to want to start this maybe somewhere around 8%, and then we'll start this somewhere around 92%. That way it just gives us a little bit of breathing room. We don't have to be all the way at the bottom for this circle to reach the bottom. That's working pretty good there. Also, the mouse Y needs to start at 0. That way it snaps this back up to the top, and the smoothing needs to be set somewhere around 80, just so that way it's a little bit smoother. I'll set mine to 82 in this example. So that's working pretty good there. The last part we really need to do is set some sort of trigger on this tricks trigger, so that way whenever our mouse is over this trigger, it's going to change the background color of the circle. So what I'll go ahead and do is on mouse hover, we can do maybe start an interaction, and we'll call this trigger hover in. And all we really want to do, you can maybe change the border color or the background color or whatever you want to do there, but for this example, I'll just change the background color. Apply this to the class. Maybe we'll switch the background color to purple whenever we're at the bottom, and I'll change the duration. And then we'll do another trigger hover, and this time it'll be trigger hover out. And we just want to change the background color here. Maybe we change it back to this black. Again, only affect the class. Set the duration, and then that's working pretty well there. So our main components that we have are sort of this trick circle. We have a heading inside it. That's totally optional. The interaction is applied to our tricks drag right here, and our trigger is also at the bottom here, so that way whenever we hover over it, it's going to change this circle right before we release. Whenever we release off the trigger, when we let our mouse go up, then it's going to take us to a new page. One other thing we may want to do is play this Lottie in the background, so I'll go ahead and open this up again. This time we'll grab the Lottie file, and we'll do a Lottie, apply this to the class, going from 0, going all the way to 100, so that way it just plays as our mouse moves over this. It's going to move up and down like that, and that is working pretty well. That's all set there. So let's go ahead and save this, and again, to really see this in action, we have to publish it and preview it on the live site. Now the code's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, so by default you'll see moving over this element on the live site isn't actually doing anything. I actually had to press and hold to be able to cue that move interaction, so it's definitely simulating sort of a drag interaction. Now if I move my mouse outside of this container, you'll notice it just slides back up to the top, so that's going to basically simulate our drag interaction there. Now whenever I drag to the bottom and it enters that trigger we have at the bottom, you'll notice the background color changed. We could also maybe make it scale up more or whatever we want to do there. Now if I release while it's still purple, while it's at the bottom, it's going to take me to that first page that we created. So both of these seem to be working pretty well. I can do the press and hold to cue it up that way, or I could click, hold, and drag up or down and then go all the way to the bottom, and if I release down here at the bottom, it takes me to the next page, and that seems to be working pretty well. So that's how you can do a press and hold or a click and drag interaction to enter to a new page on the site. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If so, definitely hit that subscribe button below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.